It was the first time in a long time that Maddie had received a love letter. This feeling was a little strange and a little baffling. As she was thinking about how to handle the love letter in her hand, the class bell rang. Maddie immediately returned the love letter back into her bag. The teacher came in, and Maddie listened to the class carefully. After the lesson, Maddie forgot about the love letter completely. When she got home, it was almost time for dinner. After entering the hall, she did not see Jeff, so she asked the servant, "Where's Jeff?" "Mr. Holmes said he won't be back for dinner. He has something to do tonight. He wants you to finish your homework after dinner." Great, Maddie thought. She hoped that Jeff would come back later, so she could play games on her phone for a little longer. Maddie returned to her room after finishing her meal and checked her school bag onto the sofa. Then she started to play on her phone while turning on the TV. It was easy to pass the time by having fun. Maddie didn't notice the passage of time at all. Meanwhile, Jeff returned home, and he opened the door and saw Maddie playing on the sofa with her phone in her hand. Her school bag was still untouched beside her, and it was obvious that she had not even taken out her workbook. Jeff's face immediately turned dark. Maddie nearly dropped her phone when she saw that Jeff had come into the room. "Jeff, you're back?" Maddie forced a laugh. "You came back rather early." "Early? What time is it?" Maddie looked at the time on her phone and said, "It's 10 p.m. "You finished your homework?" Jeff asked. Maddie remembered that she had not even done her homework, and her heart skipped a beat. This was bad. Maddie had been caught red-handed, and she couldn't even find an excuse for herself. Her brain wasn't working. Jeff walked towards Maddie with elegant but dangerous steps. Maddie pursed her lips, feeling extremely nervous. Jeff's tall figure stood firmly in front of Maddie. "Didn't the servant tell you to do your homework?" Jeff asked. "Yes," Maddie whimpered. "Then why didn't you do it?" "I forgot," Maddie whispered. Jeff's face darkened. "Then get to it!" Maddie instantly became quick-witted and picked up her school bag before sitting down at the desk. She quickly took out a book and something fell out of it. Maddie tilted her head and took a look. When she saw what was on the ground, she was frightened out of her wits. She quickly picked up the books and stuffed them back into her bag. "Bring it here," Jeff ordered in a deep, slightly intimidating voice. Maddie's small hand stiffened as she tried to hide what she was holding. "It's nothing, just a piece of paper." "Let me see." "There's nothing to see, really." "Do you need me to say it again?" Jeff's cold eyes were sharp. Maddie bit her lips. She hesitated for a moment before forcing herself to hand over the heart-shaped letter. When Jeff held the heart-shaped letter, he smelled the fragrance on the paper. There was no need to guess what it was. He thought love letters were out of style. Maddie glanced at him. Wasn't this a violation of her privacy? But Jeff didn't care if it was an invasion of other people's privacy. He calmly opened the letter and read it. On one side of a piece of paper, there were 5 or 6 lines of words, and underneath them, there was the name of a boy. Jeff raised his eyes from the paper and looked sharply at Maddie. Maddie's heart trembled. She quickly looked at the textbook on the table. "I sent you to school to study, and now you're in love with a random boy?" Jeff's face was extremely dark, and a wave of anger rose from his heart. When she saw Jeff's vicious eyes, she quickly explained, No, I'm not in love with him. I'm not in love with him." "Then what is this? Explain yourself." Jeff shook the letter in his hand. "I don't know either. I found it on my desk," Maddie said. "You're not lying?" Jeff stared at her with his sharp black eyes. No, I don't dare lie to you," Maddie said earnestly. "I'll go to the school and investigate. I'll find out if you lied to me," Jeff threatened. "I'm not lying, Jeff. I haven't fallen in love. Right now is a critical time for learning. Also, Jeff, I think that some guy may have given that letter to me by mistake." Maddie giggled. I know that I'm not good looking. Jeff looked at Maddie's lips with a cold expression. Was this true? After all, no one had sent a love letter to Maddie before. Maddie noticed that Jeff was staring at her, his face expressionless. She didn't know if he believed her, but believe it or not, it was the truth. What are you daydreaming for? Do your homework. Jeff knocked on the table. Maddie quickly started to do her homework. Jeff turned around and left. On his way out the door, he handed the letter in his hand to the bodyguard. Go and find this boy. Yes, sir. Jeff walked into Maddie's room an hour later. She was still working on her homework. Maddie didn't even dare to raise her head as Jeff walked closer. How much do you have left? Jeff asked. Not much. I'm almost done writing, Maddie said. Jeff didn't say anything, but he left the room after watching Maddie finish her homework. The next day, Maddie went to school as usual. When class ended, the students were chattering away. Maddie listened in on a conversation happening nearby. Do you know, Luke transferred to another school. Transferred? So suddenly? Yesterday he was still in class, and I didn't hear that he was going to transfer schools. Why did he transfer? I'm not sure. Something big must have happened at home, right? When Maddie heard this, she turned her head to look at the seat that Luke usually sat in. There really was no one there. They were just about to graduate. Why would he transfer schools now? Maddie didn't think much more about Luke being gone. She didn't think it would have anything to do with her. She didn't know that Luke was the one who had written her a love letter. She thought that Jeff had already forgotten about the love letter. Maddie took a bathroom break before class started, and another boy stuffed a love letter into her bag. Maddie returned home after class, and she was surprised to see Jeff, who was sitting in the hall. Jeff, you're back so early? Maddie asked. Usually Jeff would come back much later. Disappointed? Jeff looked at her coldly. No, Maddie thought. Why would I be disappointed? She was just surprised. Give me your school bag, Jeff demanded. Why? Maddie was puzzled. I need to check it. Why are you checking my school bag? Maddie was puzzled once again. Do you have any objections? Jeff asked her coldly. Maddie obediently handed the bag over. Jeff opened it up, and after flipping it open, his hand paused for a moment. Then he took out the letter. It was again in the shape of a heart. There was no denying it. Love letters like this were back in vogue now. This time it was even a red heart. Maddie stared at the heart in disbelief. Jeff, did you put that love letter back in my school bag? Maddie thought it was the same letter. Is Jeff just bored? This was too much. Jeff was so angry that the veins on his forehead were bulging. He had destroyed the love letter from last night to the point where not even ashes remained. Where did this letter come from? Who wrote it for you? Jeff asked angrily. I don't know, Maddie said innocently. Jeff's face was extremely dark. Jeff, if I really knew that there was a love letter in my bag, I would have gotten rid of the evidence before I came home, Maddie said. If Jeff didn't see the genuinely surprised expression on Maddie's face, he would have thought she was lying. But even if he knew that Maddie was innocent, Jeff was very frustrated and had to suppress his anger. He didn't know where this inexplicable jealousy had come from. Just because Maddie cleaned her teeth, all these boys in school were sending her love letters? Jeff handed the love letter to the bodyguard behind him. He went up and grabbed Maddie, who was still in a daze, and dragged her upstairs. Jeff, what are you doing? Maddie thought he was going to make her do her homework, so she hurriedly said, Jeff, I will do my homework after I eat, okay? I'm hungry and don't have the strength to do my homework. Jeff! Jeff acted as if he didn't hear anything and dragged Maddie into her own room, going straight to the bathroom. Then he let go of her wrist. Why had they come to the bathroom? Get your teeth back to the way they were, Jeff said in a commanding tone. What? Maddie was stupefied. You don't understand? Jeff frowned impatiently. I understand, but I don't really understand why you want me to do this. Maddie couldn't figure it out at all. There's no need for you to understand. But you wanted me to dress better and be cleaner like this in the past. Now you're making me look worse? Maddie clearly remembered how Jeff had taken her to the hairdressing salon and how the hairdresser was so horrified. Jeff, why do you want me to become what I was before? Jeff stared at her coldly with his dark eyes. Why? Because if this went on, would there be a love letter hidden in her school bag every day? He wanted nothing more than to kill those boys. Where did you get all these questions? Jeff asked coldly. Maddie finally mustered up the courage to show her teeth. She had started to really like her clean teeth. Why would she purposefully make her teeth ugly again? She didn't want to. You don't want to? Jeff asked with an unfriendly expression. Under the immense pressure, Maddie shook her head. I don't want to. Maddie was so frightened that she took a step back. If she refused to ruin her teeth, Jeff wouldn't do anything to her, right? Jeff suddenly smiled, but his smile made a tingle run down Maddie's spine. You know why I asked you to clean your teeth? Jeff asked. Why? Maddie felt that she shouldn't have asked, but she was so curious. Because I want to kiss you. Maddie was shocked. Jeff, you... What? Didn't you hear me? I'll say it again, Jeff said as he approached Maddie. His voice sounded extremely scary. I want to kiss you. No, you can't kiss me. Maddie immediately covered her mouth with both hands. Why not? You have such a beautiful mouth and teeth. How can I not want to kiss you? Jeff closed in, pushing Maddie's back against the wall, preventing her from retreating any further. She looked at Jeff, who was getting closer and closer in shock. I'm a man, and It's normal for a man to have this kind of impulse. Jeff's hand landed on Maddie's small jaw. It shouldn't be like this. Jeff. Maddie's voice was trembling. It doesn't matter. I can do anything I want. Jeff stared deeply into Maddie's eyes. No, Maddie said hastily. Her breathing was fast and disordered. Move your hands, Jeff ordered Maddie. Maddie shook her head vigorously. Do you think I can't force you to move your hands? Jeff asked. Jeff grabbed her hands and easily lifted them away from Maddie's face and down to her sides. No, let go of me! Maddie's long eyelashes suddenly trembled. She shut her eyes. And then she was kissed? Was that what was happening? If not, what was that soft warmth on her mouth? Jeff originally only wanted to tease her, but he didn't expect that kissing her would be so enjoyable. Maddie tried to push Jeff, but she didn't have the strength to resist. Instead, Jeff kissed her more and more deeply. Maddie's heart was pounding, and she was about to faint from the shock. Only when Maddie was about to faint from the lack of oxygen did Jeff let her go. Maddie softly laid her head on Jeff's hard chest, trying to catch her breath. Jeff hugged her tightly. His breathing was also heavy, and his ears were actually a little red. Maddie struggled out of Jeff's embrace. She stood far away and angrily said to Jeff, Jeff, you stole my first kiss. This is too much. It would have happened sooner or later, Jeff said calmly. Looking at Maddie's swollen lips, he was in a good mood and couldn't help but reminisce about her sweet taste. Jeff raised his wrist and looked at his watch. Let's eat, and then you need to do your homework. He turned and walked out of the bathroom. Maddie was so angry that she yelled at Jeff's back. I won't care about you anymore. Whatever, Jeff said indifferently. Jeff! Jeff! Maddie didn't get a response, and she heard Jeff close the door behind him. Maddie looked at herself in the mirror, flustered and exasperated. Her red and swollen mouth was burning as she remembered Jeff's mouth on hers. This was completely different from her thoughts of having a boyfriend, sharing her first kiss with him. How can this be? She couldn't eat anymore. She lost her appetite. Jeff sat at the dining table and waited for a long time, but Maddie didn't come down. He then instructed the maid, "Call Maddie down and tell her that I'll do it again if she doesn't eat." The maid didn't know what Jeff was talking about, but she still had to relay the message. When Maddie heard what the maid said, she was so angry that she wanted to kick her. However, in the end, she still went downstairs. After entering the dining room, she sat down without even looking at Jeff. Jeff ignored her and, as usual, started to eat. Unwillingly, Maddie picked up her utensils and ate. She only ate the small side dishes and took small bites. "If you don't want the food, I'll help you," Jeff teased. "No!" Maddie hurriedly grabbed some more food to eat. She wished that she could hide her face in a bowl. "Finished." Maddie pushed the bowl away and stood up. "Do your homework," Jeff instructed. Maddie ignored him, leaving the dining room and heading straight for her bedroom. After entering the room, she slammed the door shut. She threw herself onto the bed in despair and kicked the pillow and the quilt with her feet. Jeff didn't even apologize when he took away her first kiss without her permission. How can this be? How could she act as if nothing had happened? It was not normal at all. Maddie thought of something and got out of bed to go to the bathroom. Half an hour later, her teeth were back to their former ugly state. The next morning at the breakfast table, Jeff noticed the problem with Maddie's teeth. Maddie bared her teeth at him. Seeing that Jeff did not have any expression, Maddie thought to herself, "Now let's see if you dare to kiss me or not." If she had known Jeff would kiss her, she definitely wouldn't have washed her teeth in the first place. When Maddie returned to school, she found that another male student in the classroom had transferred to another school. What was going on? Maddie also wanted to transfer schools and leave Jeff's side. However, even if she were to transfer schools, Jeff still wouldn't let her go. In the afternoon, Maddie fiddled with her phone and thought for a long time before she called Jeff. "Jeff, I want to go back to live with my mom today." "No," Jeff said. "Just for one night," Maddie begged. "No." "Half a night." "No." "Can you say something else besides no?" "Not allowed." Maddie went for the next best thing. "Then can I go to my mom's place to eat? I haven't been to my mother's for a week." "Sure." Jeff relented. Maddie directly hung up the phone. Then she called Stacy and told her that she was coming over to have dinner. Agatha was sunning herself against a wall. Maddie sat next to her. "Is it time to leave work?" Maddie asked. "When the rush hour ends, I'll be off," Agatha said. Then she turned to look at Maddie. "How have you been recently?" Maddie raised her face to the sky and thought for a moment. Then she asked Agatha, "If a man kisses you, what does it mean?" "That depends on how he reacts after kissing you." "What did you say?" Agatha asked, sounding intrigued. "What if he doesn't say anything and doesn't react at all? As if it's something normal. What does that mean?" "That's impossible, right? Perhaps you did not notice his reaction?" Agatha asked. "I noticed. There was no reaction at all," Maddie said again. "It could mean one of two things. First is just that he didn't take it seriously and is just kissing you for fun. The second is that he had a big shock when he kissed you, but he is hiding it. What do you think it looks like?" "The first," Maddie said confidently. Jeff's personality was so rude. Kissing her definitely wouldn't make his heart tremble, right? The relationship between the two of them was so awkward. It must have been a kiss just to scare her. Well, Maddie, maybe you just have to kiss him again and pay better attention to his reaction. Before Agatha could finish speaking, Maddie looked at her in horror. Don't tell me that I have to kiss him again after all that. Don't you know? Some feelings are just so baffling, Agatha said seriously. However, Maddie was unwilling to believe Agatha's words. Besides, she felt that Jeff would definitely not kiss her a second time. At first, maybe he would have if she had kept her teeth looking good, but now they had become very ugly. Jeff would keep his mouth away. I say, who kissed you? Agatha asked. It doesn't matter. It's someone from the school. Maddie's eyes flickered. Seeing that she did not plan to elaborate, Agatha did not ask anymore. From the looks of it, Maddie seemed to be hiding the identity of the man for some reason. It's fine as long as you know what's good for you. Don't get bullied. If you really get bullied, you still have me. Don't worry, Agatha said in a righteous tone. All right. Even if Maddie was bullied, no one could help her, not even her own mother. Her phone rang. Upon seeing that it was Stacy, she hurriedly stood up. I'm going back to eat with my mom. I'll come see you soon. With that, she ran off like a wisp of smoke. She didn't get back to her mom's house until about 6. As soon as she entered, she yelled, Mom, I'm here. But the last word was stuck in her throat because she saw Jeff sitting on the sofa in the living room. Jeff, why are you here? Maddie asked. Stacy, who was standing behind Maddie, pushed her and scolded her in a low voice. Be polite. Maddie rolled her eyes. Why should she be polite to Jeff? She felt bitter in her heart. Hearing Stacy's rebuke, Jeff didn't react. It's all right. Stacy felt weird about this situation. However, now was not the time to dwell on this. She said to Maddie, Hurry up and wash your hands. It's time to eat. Maddie went to the bathroom to wash her hands, while Stacy went to the kitchen to serve dishes. While Maddie was rinsing her hands, the door behind her creaked open. Maddie turned her head and stopped washing her hands. She stared blankly at Jeff, who was leaning against the door. His black suit jacket was open, and even the top of his shirt was unbuttoned, revealing a sexy and wild texture underneath. What time did your class end? Jeff asked. Lucia didn't respond. Why weren't you here on time? Jeff persisted. I went to visit Agatha, Maddie said. Actually, she didn't need to tell Jeff about it at all. She felt that Jeff was meddling in her affairs too much, but she didn't have the guts to fight Jeff. Why did you have to go today? Jeff continued to interrogate her. Maddie rolled her eyes. I don't want you to know. Jeff, aren't you being too overbearing? I didn't do anything, so why are you asking me all these questions? Why can't I ask? Jeff countered. Maddie was speechless. Why did it feel like a heinous crime for her to visit Agatha? Maddie, are you done washing up? Stacy shouted from the kitchen. Maddie came back to her senses. Yes, I'm done. Then she quickly washed the rest of the soap off her hands and walked past Jeff. Every nerve in her body was buzzing. She walked into the dining room, but she didn't dare sit down. She only sat down when Jeff sat down. Maddie originally wanted to speak honestly with Stacy, but now that Jeff was here, she struggled to even breathe. After dinner, Jeff went to smoke on the balcony. Stacy pulled Maddie to the side and asked, Did something happen between you and Jeff? Maddie's heart thumped. However, on the surface, Maddie pretended to be confused. Nothing happened. Why? Why are you asking? Stacy shrugged. Something feels weird. You're not trying to get along with him, are you? Jeff is not an ordinary person, so don't act recklessly. Stacy lectured her. Maddie felt wronged in her heart, but she could not say anything. Did you forget when Jeff gave you all that money? We can't be ungrateful, you know. Stacy had once done something she especially regretted, so she couldn't let Maddie make the same mistake. Maddie finally understood what her mom was saying. Stacy did not want Maddie to continue staying by Jeff's side. It wasn't that she wanted her to leave. Seeing Jeff made her mom think of Jeff's dad. Although Jeff said he didn't care, how could she not think about it? She was afraid that Stephen would find Maddie and hurt her. "Let me ask you something," Stacy said carefully. "What?" Maddie asked. "Has anyone been looking for you recently?" Maddie thought about Stacy's question. Could she be referring to Lydia? However, Lydia hadn't looked for her again. "No one is looking for me," Maddie said. Stacy heaved a sigh of relief. She could stand to be mocked and ridiculed by Stephen, but Maddie was still basically a child. "Mom, what's wrong?" Why did Maddie feel that her mother was acting so weird? "Nothing. Why didn't you tell me earlier that you were coming for dinner today? It was difficult to prepare something on such short notice." Stacy scolded her. "What did you want to prepare?" Maddie pouted and said, "I don't know, but you can't do this again." Stacy looked around the luxurious apartment and said, "I found a good job and am ready to move out of here." "Really? Does Jeff know?" Maddie asked. "If I tell him, he might want me to stay. I can't be so tactless. So I'll wait until I find a good apartment, then I'll tell him after I move in." Maddie felt that this was a good idea. When the sky turned dark and night fell, Maddie followed Jeff and went back with him to his house. After getting in the car, Maddie asked, "Jeff, why did you come here?" "To eat," he said simply. Maddie didn't believe that he had come only to eat. She looked at Jeff unhappily. "You came here to watch me, right?" "You need to ask," Jeff said. "Why are you watching me? I'm not a kid. I already told you on the phone that I was going to my mom's place to eat," Maddie said. "Are you unaware of your own mistakes?" Jeff asked. Maddie realized it was because she wasn't on time to her mother's for dinner. "I won't be late next time," she said with her head bowed. "It's good that you know. In the future, you must tell me everything or else," Jeff threatened. "Aren't you being too strict?" Maddie had never been treated like this in her entire life. She didn't think even her father would treat her like this, even if he were alive. "I can be stricter," Jeff warned. "Then why did you kiss me?" Maddie said, unconvinced. What Jeff did was more serious than what she did. What kind of logic was this? "You want to know?" Jeff lazily sat in his seat with his legs crossed. He looked at Maddie indifferently and said, "You should be mentally prepared." "Why?" Maddie asked, puzzled. "Not only will I kiss you now, I will also kiss you in the future," Jeff teased. Maddie was so frightened that her eyes widened, and she instinctively retreated. Are you joking?" The next second, Jeff extended his arm and grabbed the back of Maddie's neck, forcefully pulling her closer to him. "Ow!" Maddie's noise was blocked as their lips met. By the time she reacted, Jeff had already returned to his seat. He looked at her with his dark eyes as if nothing had happened. Don't you see how ugly my teeth are?" Maddie struggled to find her voice, but her body was trembling uncontrollably. "I saw them," Jeff said casually. "Why did you kiss me then? One kiss wasn't enough?" Maddie rebuked him angrily. "If you continue screaming, I'll cover your mouth with mine," Jeff threatened her. Maddie stuffed her fist into her mouth and bit down on it. At this moment, her heart was in turmoil. "Isn't your hand dirty?" Jeff frowned coldly. "Not as dirty as you." Maddie was furious. "What did you say?" Jeff's expression turned dark. "It's true, isn't it? You always go to bars to find women. You've kissed so many women, yet I've never kissed any other boy." The The more Maddie said, the more she felt wronged. How could Jeff snatch away her first kiss? She had no idea how this had happened. What Maddie said made Jeff blink as he looked out the window. He hadn't actually kissed very many women. However, there was no need to tell Maddie the truth. She wouldn't understand even if he told her. Jeff only said, "I won't kiss another woman in the future." After saying that, he couldn't help but frown. Why did he have to promise Maddie that he would do this? "It's not my business whether you kiss other women or not. You just can't kiss me." Maddie was on the verge of tears. "It's not up to you," Jeff teased. Maddie was shocked by Jeff's impoliteness. She clapped her hands on the car door. "I want to get out. I want to get out. Stop the car." Jeff looked at her coldly. "You can jump out." Of course, Maddie didn't dare to jump out of a moving car. It would be fine if she jumped to her death, but if she was crippled, wouldn't she suffer a fate worse than death? The car wouldn't stop at all without Jeff's permission, and it was moving at high speed. Maddie, who was sitting by the door, looked at Jeff with wariness and said pitifully, "I have to go back and find my mom. I want to live with my mom. I don't want to go back to the mansion." "It's too late to think of leaving now. If I couldn't get rid of you back then I can't do it now," Jeff said. "Why can't I leave?" Maddie said pitifully. Maddie was on the verge of tears. If she had known he would be this way, she would not have delivered herself to his doorstep. Jeff did not say anything for the rest of the drive. He was just looking at Maddie sulking. The car arrived at the door of the mansion, and they got out. A servant walked over and said, "Mr. Holmes, your father is here." Jeff's eyes narrowed. Maddie, who was walking behind Jeff, was stunned. She immediately understood what was happening. Jeff's father was the man who adopted her mother. When Jeff walked in, he realized that Maddie did not follow him. Turning around, he saw Maddie standing in place. "Jeff, should I avoid seeing him?" Maddie asked. "No need." Then I don't want to go in." Jeff looked at her nervous expression and didn't force her. "Go to the car and stay there." "Okay." Maddie turned around and ran back to the safety of the car. Maddie watched Jeff walk into the mansion. It was not that Maddie did not dare to meet Jeff's dad. Rather, she didn't want him to see her current state. She absolutely could not allow him to see her ugly appearance. Stephen, who was waiting in the hall, couldn't help but look behind him when he heard Jeff walk in by himself. "You came back alone?" he asked. Jeff didn't reply to his father's words and just asked, "You have something to talk to me about?" "When are you going to get married?" Stephen asked. Jeff's expression turned ugly. "As long as you agree to get married, I won't meddle in your affairs anymore," Stephen promised. "You should have kept that woman and had her give you a few more sons." Jeff's expression was extremely dark. Stephen's face paled slightly, as if he had been stabbed in the heart. Outside, Maddie was waiting in the car. She didn't know how long she was going to have to stay in the car, and she had no idea what the people inside were talking about. To be honest, she had yet to meet Jeff's father. She didn't even know what he looked like. According to Stacy, if it wasn't for him, she would have been left in the orphanage forever. Therefore, she was very grateful to Jeff's father, and she wished her mother hadn't run off and eloped. But there was no time for regret. Stacy wanted to make up for her mistakes, but Stephen wouldn't give her another chance. Maddie might not be able to face Stephen head on, but could she secretly peek at him? Just to see what he looks like? Maddie got out of the car and walked towards the mansion, walking towards the entrance of the hall. Then she squatted there and peeked around the corner with one eye. Standing in a rage in the hall, she saw Jeff's father. Jeff was sitting calmly on the sofa. From a glance, it was clear that Jeff had the upper hand. even though he was sitting. Maddie looked at the furious Stephen and thought, so it turns out that Jeff's dad has a dignified appearance? Was he the one who took her mother in? No matter what, Maddie couldn't hate such a person. If it wasn't for the fact that he took her mother in, her mother wouldn't have had the chance to meet her father, and she wouldn't have existed. Judging from his appearance, Jeff was even sharper than his father. I already said that as long as you and Lydia get married, I won't bother you anymore, Stephen repeated. As Stephen spoke, Jeff's eyes became even more annoyed, and his expression became extremely cold. Maddie, who was hiding in the dark, realized that Stephen was there to get Jeff to promise to get married. That's right. Jeff was already at the age to get married. What was he planning to do if not get married? Even if you come every day, it's useless, Jeff said. Stephen was pacing back and forth in anger because of his son, as if this was the only way to suppress the anger in his heart. I've already allowed Stacy's daughter to stay here for months. What else do you want from me? Stephen yelled. Does she need your permission to stay with me? Jeff sneered. Yes! Jeff's expression was even more sinister than before as he ordered the servant. See the guest out. Jeff, don't be arrogant. Stephen was infuriated. I always have been, Jeff said. Stephen was speechless. In the entranceway, Maddie saw that Jeff's dad was about to leave, so she quickly turned around and ran out to get into the car before she was noticed. The bodyguard just watched her actions, not saying anything. Not long after Maddie got in the car, she saw Stephen walk out of the mansion. He got into another car and left. Maddie heaved a sigh of relief and got out of the car and went into the hall. In the living room, Jeff was still sitting on the sofa with a cigarette in his mouth. His expression was calm, as if nothing had happened. Jeff glanced at her and stood up to go upstairs. Jeff! Maddie shouted. Actually, if you don't want to marry Lydia, you can marry another woman. Jeff turned around and stared at her with his black eyes. So, you were eavesdropping? Maddie's guilty conscience exposed her actions in an instant. However, she continued. If you don't like Lydia, you can marry another woman. Besides, your dad didn't say that he wanted you to marry Lydia, did he? Jeff, what do you think of what I said? Not much, Jeff replied coldly. Then he turned around and walked upstairs. Jeff, I'm speaking the truth, Maddie called after him. Jeff turned around and said coldly, Don't you need to do your homework? Maddie's small mouth trembled. I'll go right now. Then she walked past Jeff and jogged towards her room. She must have thought more than he did. Jeff reached out his hand to call his bodyguard. When my father visits in the future, he must ask for my permission. Yes, sir. Maddie was sitting at her desk, holding a pen in her mouth. The words hadn't even been written yet. She felt that Stephen had no other choice but to tolerate Jeff's actions. He said that Jeff would have to get married, but Jeff did not agree. He didn't want to get married. The thought of Jeff getting married made Maddie secretly rejoice in her heart. If Jeff got married, wouldn't she have a chance to leave this place? If she left the house, then there would be no need to be afraid of Jeff kissing her. What are you laughing at? Jeff asked. Maddie, who was still in a daze, was shocked by Jeff's low voice. When she came back to her senses, she saw Jeff, who had appeared out of nowhere. She was displeased. Jeff, you didn't even knock on the door when you came in? Would you have heard me if I knocked on the door? Jeff asked. So, did you knock? Maddie was confused. Nope. Maddie rolled her eyes. You're infringing on my privacy. What privacy? Jeff asked. It's a girl's privacy. Maddie blushed. If there's a place that's private, the more I want to see it, Jeff said arrogantly. Maddie was infuriated. How could he be like this? Jeff wasn't like this in the past. Jeff thought about the smile on Maddie's face when he came in earlier. It was really eye-catching. "Are you happy that I'm getting married?" Jeff asked. Maddie didn't know why Jeff asked that, but the first response in her heart was, "I'm very happy that you'll be married." She couldn't tell what Jeff was thinking. "Aren't you happy?" Maddie asked carefully. "You don't have to worry about me," Jeff said. Maddie thought of something and smiled. "Jeff, getting married is very good. In the future, you will have a wife that will treat you well and you can have kids. Doesn't that make you happy?" "You really want to get me married, don't you?" Jeff laughed sinisterly. Maddie shook her head under Jeff's pressure and said, "What I said was true. I'm thinking about this for your own good." "No need," Jeff said. Jeff's upper body slowly pressed down. With his elbow on the desk, he grabbed Maddie's delicate and small jaw and approached her. "Do you think I will let you go if I get married?" Maddie's eyes were very clear and were filled with shock, the shock of being seen through. Jeff had discovered all of her thoughts. Would she deny it? After all, she hadn't said it out loud. "Don't worry, Maddie. Even if I don't get married, you won't be leaving." Jeff was unreasonable. "And if you do get married?" Maddie asked while breathing heavily. She was afraid that her short breath would provoke Jeff. "You will still stay by my side when I get married," Jeff said. "Why would I stay with you when you're married?" Maddie felt that this was an unreasonable decision. "To serve me," Jeff said. "Why? To serve you?" Maddie felt so confused. Why couldn't she understand what Jeff said at all? What did any of this have to do with her? However, Jeff didn't answer her and only released his grip on her. Maddie felt a little scared. "Jeff, you won't keep me by your side forever, right? I know that you've been so good to me. However, I will return all the money you spent on me in the future." "Then we'll talk about it after it's settled," Jeff said. "That shouldn't be too expensive, right?" Maddie asked. "Not too expensive." "That's good." Maddie heaved a sigh of relief. "It'll be $1 million, Jeff said. Maddie was so shocked that she almost fell from her seat. "What? How could I spend $1 million? It was a few hundred at most. You are being unreasonable. You just want me to be your slave. I want a future, and I want to get married and have children." "Children?" Jeff's black eyes twitched slightly. "Yes." Maddie nodded vigorously. "With me?" Jeff teased. Maddie's heart was in turmoil. "No, it won't be your child." What kind of joke was this? What on earth was he thinking? Jeff sneered. "You still want to get married?" "Is there a problem with that?" Maddie asked. "Without my permission, you're not allowed to marry, nor are you allowed to interact with other guys," Jeff demanded. Maddie was stunned. "If I find out who you're getting close to, I'll punish everyone," Jeff threatened. Maddie was about to cry. Could she somehow reverse time? She would rather fight her stepdad or stay outside forever rather than looking for Jeff. What a big mistake she had made. Jeff ignored the shocked expression on Maddie's face. He lazily sat down on a nearby chair and asked, "How many words did you write?" Maddie's neck turned, looking at her homework that she hadn't started. She looked pitifully at Jeff again. "I'm not in the mood to do it." "Are you sure?" Jeff asked. Maddie miserably began to do her homework. The pen in her hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, and she was unable to lift it at all. "Do you want me to kiss you?" Jeff asked. "No!" Maddie looked up in shock. Seeing Jeff's dark expression, she quickly recovered her strength and started to do her homework. As she did so, she complained about her pain. Why was her fate so bitter? What had she done wrong to be forced to such a horrible situation? Could she still save herself? Not at all. She was so worried about Jeff kissing her. Jeff saw how obediently she did her homework, and his gaze couldn't help but fall on Maddie's messy face. Previously, he thought that her face was so ugly that he couldn't take a second look. But now, he felt that it wasn't ugly anymore. He must be used to it. Maddie's eyes were bright, her nose was straight, and her mouth was small. When Jeff thought of her sweet smell, he felt a bit restless. But she was doing her homework. He cleared his throat. Maddie heard the noise and raised her head to look at Jeff. She said, "I'm not done with my homework." Jeff's eyes darkened uncomfortably. He stood up and suppressed his voice as he said, "I'll come and check later." With that, he left Maddie's room. Maddie looked at the closed door and thought, "I really want to lock it." But she didn't dare. Jeff returned to his room and prepared to take a bath. He had lived for so long as if he didn't need a woman, but now his heart was cracking. When he got back to the bedroom, he went straight to bed. And then he began to dream. It was a dream that hadn't come to him since he was an adolescent. "Jeff, didn't you say you want me to serve you?" The girl in the dream was passionate. Jeff could not take it anymore. His black eyes were glowing. He wanted nothing more than to turn into a giant snake and swallow the girl whole. "Jeff, you look so scary. Will you eat me?" the girl asked innocently, with a deadly seduction. Jeff heard himself say, "Yes." The girl's face had an alluring blush. "I really like you." Jeff growled. He couldn't help but hold the girl tightly and kiss her. Then he suddenly opened his eyes. Only now did he realize what a dream he had just had. He could feel the effects under the quilt. With a swoosh, he pushed away the blanket, and what he saw caused his face to turn dark. Jeff cursed. This hadn't happened in years. He got out of bed with a cold face and went to change his pants. Maddie was doing her homework obediently in her room. Even after finishing her homework, Jeff didn't come back. This made her wonder if Jeff would come back again tonight. She was afraid of Jeff's thoughts. They were no longer as innocent as they used to be. Maddie wondered why Jeff wanted to kiss her. She stood in front of her bathroom mirror. No matter how much Maddie looked at her face, her mouth was wide and her teeth were ugly, and she had horrible clothing. Could it be that Jeff didn't like beauties and only liked ugly girls? It couldn't be, because she knew that Jeff used to like Lucia, and Lucia was so cute and beautiful. How strange. Across town, Lucia was still feeling the effects of her night in the cold. Just because Lucia was sick didn't mean that Dalen treated her the same as before. Dalen was still cold to her. He would do nothing but sleep in the same bed as her. During the day, Dalen was almost always with Victoria. Lucia walked out of her room and passed by the balcony. The sunlight from the balcony was just right, and it was warm as it shone on her body. However, she saw that Dalen and Victoria were on the balcony and seemed to be talking about something. Victoria had a gentle smile on her face, while Dalen looked at her lovingly. Did the sun warm Dalen, or did Victoria warm him? When Dalen and Victoria saw her, Lucia walked over. "Dalen, I'm going to the company." "All I know is that you don't know the first thing about running that company." Dalen's expression turned cold. Lucia looked at Dalen. "Don't tell me you don't want to see me try." "Didn't Mark find you someone to take his place and do everything for you?" Dalen asked rudely. "That Mark is so nice to you," Victoria interrupted. Lucia frowned and looked at Dalen. Dalen's expression was indeed very cold. "Mark did find someone for me. I hired Tracy, and the two of them are about to remarry. When they get married, I'm going to give them a big gift," Lucia said. Dalen didn't say anything. "Dalen, do you agree?" "Forget it. I won't go if you don't want me to." Lucia directly sat beside Dalen. Dalen turned and looked at Lucia. Lucia looked back at him and met his eyes. "Dalen, if they were to remarry, wouldn't you also give them a big gift? What are you going to send them? I don't have any money, so I might not be able to give much. But as long as your heart is there, that's enough, don't you think?" Dalen retracted his gaze and stopped looking at her. Victoria looked at Lucia and Dalen. They acted as if she didn't exist. The jealousy in her heart was instantly set ablaze. She knew how tricky Lucia was. She said she was going to the company because she wanted to get close to Dalen. Then she sat beside Dalen as if it was a matter of course. It seemed that Victoria had to guard against Lucia's scheming at all times. Lucia could tell from the expression in Victoria's eyes that she was extremely angry. Lucia smiled silently at her, then put her head on Dalen's strong arm. "Can't you sit up?" Dalen frowned slightly. Lucia raised her watery eyes and blinked innocently at Dalen's cold face. "I've just recovered from a serious illness. Why don't you let me lean on you?" Dalen was shocked by her clear eyes. He turned his face away and didn't look at her anymore. He also didn't push her away. Lucia looked at the twisted expression on Victoria's face and thought, "What method should I use to chase Victoria out of the mansion?" Victoria regained her composure and said tiredly, "Dalen, my body isn't feeling well. I'll head back to my room to rest." "Yes," Dalen replied. Victoria stood up and left. When Victoria reached the door of her room, her cell phone rang. She took a look and saw that it was Robert. She went into the room immediately and closed the door behind her as she answered the phone. When the door was about to close, a small foot stuck in the crack of the door, so the door was not closed all the way. Victoria, who was focused on the phone, didn't notice. "Robert, is there something you need to tell me?" Victoria asked. "I already know the ins and outs of Jerica being sent back," Robert said. "Jerica did it to help me. Robert, don't blame her." Victoria pleaded for Jerica. "She is a small matter. I was worried about what Dalen would think. Does he believe you?" Robert asked. "I don't understand. At first, Dalen was angry at Lucia, but when Lucia fainted, he took her back to her room and called for a doctor to treat her. I cannot understand Dalen's thoughts," Victoria said. If Dalen said he didn't believe her, then why wasn't Dalen's attitude towards Lucia getting worse? Why was Dalen still so unfathomable? "What about his attitude toward you? Does he doubt you?" Robert asked. Victoria couldn't say that Dalen didn't suspect anything. He was still very wary and cautious. "He seems to have no reservations about anything. What I have done, he has no doubts about it. I think between Lucia and myself, he would still side with me. As long as Dalen has this intention, I am confident about defeating Lucia," Victoria said. "And we have to end this quickly. We can't wait for Dalen to recover his memories. When that happens, just think about the consequences." "I understand. Thank you for your reminder." After Victoria hung up, she heaved a sigh of relief. Robert wanted to rush everything, but she knew that it was necessary. If Dalen recovered his memory, she wouldn't be able to do anything. This was the only chance she had. Linda had also told her to hurry up. However, although Dalen had lost his memories, it didn't mean that he could be easily manipulated. Dalen was still that Dalen. He had just forgotten some things. "Your call ended so quickly?" The voice from behind gave Victoria a fright. She turned around and saw Lucia leaning against the door. Did she hear what she said to Robert just now? So what if you heard? Dalen won't believe you. Victoria sneered coldly, looking fearless. Is that so? Lucia raised her cell phone and shook it at her. Victoria's expression changed. What do you mean? I recorded it. Don't you understand? I thought that you would. Lucia looked at her mockingly. You actually dared to secretly record what I've said? Victoria had not expected Lucia to do something like this. She was so angry that her face turned pale. Don't faint. Actually, it doesn't matter if you faint unless you spend the rest of your life in bed and don't wake up. Lucia sneered. What do you want? Victoria asked. What do you think? Of course I want Dalen to hear. Listen to how Victoria plotted against him with his own uncle. Lucia looked at her coldly. So what? Victoria said. Lucia rolled her eyes. I thought you were smart. If you don't want me to tell Dalen, then hurry up and leave the mansion. What if I don't want to? Victoria shot back. You will, Lucia said confidently before waving her phone again. I'll wait for you on the balcony. After saying that, she left with a smile. Victoria was so angry. How could she be so easily tricked by Lucia? She didn't expect that Lucia would follow her here. Would Lucia really send the recording to Dalen? But Victoria didn't want to leave the mansion. This was her best shot at being with him. How could she fail? Lucia returned to the balcony and sat beside Dalen. Dalen looked at her blankly. I'm going to the toilet. Dalen, do you need to go? Lucia asked with a smile. Do I need a reminder to go to the toilet? Dalen's gaze was cold. It's not a bad thing to remind you, right? Lucia asked innocently. Dalen didn't answer her. He just looked at Lucia's smiling face and asked, Where's Victoria? Lucia's clear eyes froze. If you're worried about her, you can go and find her, Lucia said unhappily. While the two of them were in a stalemate, Victoria walked onto the balcony. She sat down in her original seat. Didn't you say you were going to rest? Dalen asked. Dalen turned a blind eye to Lucia's emotional fluctuations and only looked at Victoria. I felt better, so I came back. Are you feeling better? You must have a lot of things to say to Dalen, right? I wonder if I should leave you two, Lucia pointed out. She looked at Victoria. Victoria naturally understood what Lucia meant. However, she didn't want to say it, nor could she open her mouth. Lucia saw that Victoria did not want to say anything. She started fiddling with her phone while saying to Dalen, Dalen, I have a good song on my phone. Do you want to hear it? What is it? Dalen looked at her. You'll know it when you hear it. Lucia looked at Victoria, then put her phone closer to Dalen and pointed at something. Victoria fiercely closed her eyes, as though she had made a heavy and hard decision, and said, Dalen, I want to go home and live there for a while. What's the matter? Dalen asked. It's not good for me to stay here all the time, and the main thing is that I want to go back and see Catherine, Victoria said with a gentle expression. A hint of doubt flashed across Dalen's black eyes. He turned around and looked at Lucia. It has something to do with you, doesn't it? Lucia, who was called out, was inwardly displeased. What do you mean? Why would it have anything to do with me? Victoria, you'd better make it clear to Dalen that I'm not forcing you to leave. With that, Lucia stood up and left in a huff. She didn't want to see Dalen and Victoria's irreconcilable look. Furthermore, she was certain that Victoria would not speak the truth. With Victoria's stubbornness towards attaining Dalen, she definitely wouldn't want to tell the truth. Dalen frowned, and his black eyes were cold as he watched Lucia walk away. Dalen, don't be angry. What Lucia said is right. I just want to go home to see Catherine. I have no other intentions and it has nothing to do with Lucia, Victoria said. I'll have the car take you back, Dalen offered. With a smile on her face, Victoria replied, All right. Lucia leaned against the window, watching Victoria's car leave. Her mind felt more at ease now. She fiddled with the phone in her hand. Recording? Of course there was no recording. It was just a lie to Victoria. This was her cell phone, and she hadn't yet figured out how to take a recording. The door to the room was pushed open, and Lucia looked at Dalen as he walked in. Dalen looked at Lucia with his cold eyes. She knew what he was angry about. Dalen ignored her and went back to his own business. When Lucia saw Dalen open his laptop, she ignored him. She didn't even try to coax him. She was too angry to be in a playful mood. She turned around, walked into the bedroom, and fell on the bed sulkily. Then, thinking of something, she jumped up from the bed and left the room. The door slammed shut behind her. Dalen raised his dark eyes from the computer and looked at the closed door. The room Victoria used must be disinfected. Do you hear me? Lucia instructed. Edward and John both listened. Young madame, don't worry. The new bed is already being bought. If we disinfect it, there will definitely be no trace of her left, John said with a smile. Although he didn't understand why Victoria would suddenly leave, he was very happy about it. It was like the clouds had cleared. That's right. We can't let Dalen, who is still in his recovery, get infected. Edward, what do you say? Lucia asked. There was no helping it. Edward was the one in charge. Young madam is right. The room should definitely be carefully disinfected, Edward agreed. That's good. Lucia nodded in satisfaction. Lucia returned to her room after finishing her instructions. Dalen was still facing the computer. Was Dalen in a bad mood? Was it because Victoria had left? Or did Dalen just ignore her even more than before? Lucia went back to the bedroom, fell down on her bed, and closed her eyes. Her heart felt tired. Dalen clearly knew that he had wronged her, so why couldn't he comfort her? There should at least be an explanation, right? Lucia fell asleep with such a mess of thoughts in her mind. When Robert returned from the company, he saw Victoria returning home. Why did you come back? Robert asked. Victoria had already thought of what to say. When you called me, Lucia snuck by my room and heard our conversation, and she even recorded it. She wanted to show Dalen. I had no choice, so she made me come back. Victoria tried to push the blame onto Robert's badly timed phone call. Robert's expression became ugly and twisted. However, he would not regret what he had done. He would only blame others. Lucia, I really shouldn't have allowed her to live, Robert said fiercely. Please, don't worry. This time was completely different. As long as Dalen's mind is on me, he will still want me, Victoria said. I hope so. Robert didn't want to say more and left. Victoria knew that even though Robert didn't blame her, he would still feel that she was useless. She was so easily tricked by Lucia. That night, Lucia slept on the bed without Dalen. Dalen had returned to the master bedroom. Lucia tossed and turned in her bed. Could it be that she chased Victoria away just to start another huge fight with Dalen? Absolutely not. She was trying to get on good terms with Dalen. She couldn't wait for him to recover his memories. Wasn't this a waste of time? After Lucia thought of this, she lifted the blanket and got off the bed. She tiptoed to the master bedroom. It was pitch black inside. Ah! Lucia immediately hit the corner of the table, making her grimace in pain. After calming down, she carefully made her way to the bed. Dalen woke up when he heard the commotion caused by Lucia entering the room. but he remained calm and collected, so Lucia thought that Dalen had fallen asleep. She found the bed, crawled onto it, and got in next to Dalen. After Lucia's eyes got used to the darkness, she raised her head and looked at Dalen's face. His eyes were closed. Lucia could not help but get closer. Then she kissed Dalen's cheek. Seeing no reaction from Dalen, Lucia put her head back on the pillow. Dalen, when will you recover your memories? If you don't recover them, what should I do? Lucia thought gloomily. After Lucia fell asleep, Dalen opened his eyes. His eyes were deep and dark in the night. The next morning, Lucia woke up to a slight movement on the bed. She had actually become a light sleeper. Perhaps it was because she was afraid that Dalen would leave. There were only the two of them in the mansion now, but she was still worried, as if Dalen would leave her at any moment. This is strange. Why am I sleeping here? Lucia scratched her head and asked innocently. Dalen glanced at her and pursed his lips. He did not plan to respond to Lucia's act of playing dumb. I know. I must have been sleepwalking, Lucia said to Dalen with a smile. Dalen ignored her and went into the bathroom. Sleepwalking? That was the best she could do? Before he had gone to bed, Dalen guessed that Lucia would definitely sneak into his room. He should have locked the door and not let her in. But he didn't. What kind of mentality was this? Dalen was a bit annoyed. At the breakfast table, Lucia looked at Dalen, who ate silently, and said, Dalen, I'm not going anywhere today. Whatever you want to do, I'll accompany you. No need, Dalen said expressionlessly. Why not? She asked. I'm going to my company, Dalen replied. Lucia wasn't too happy with this arrangement, but she still said, Then I'll go to the company as well. You're not allowed to go, Dalen said rudely. Why? Is it because Victoria is no longer here that you don't want to stay in the mansion? Or do you just not want to see me? Lucia's heart was both angry and sour. Haven't you caused enough trouble? Dalen's eyes turned sharp. Lucia bit her lips as she stared at him with watery eyes. Dalen shifted his eyes away, stood up, and left the mansion. Lucia sat alone at the dining table, unable to continue eating. Could it be that what she did was wrong? Wasn't it because Victoria wasn't there that he went to the company and avoided her? Since Dalen wasn't in the mansion, she was so lonely. Even with such a huge mansion, her heart was still empty. Tears flowed down her face. Lucia didn't want to stay in the mansion and let her imagination run wild, so she also went to work. Cole was stunned when he saw Lucia come in. Why are you here? Why can't I come? I want to work hard. If Tracy ever leaves, who am I going to rely on? You figured everything out then? Cole asked. Lucia didn't respond. Where's Dalen? Cole asked. At work. I knew it. If he was at the mansion, you wouldn't come to the company. Seeing Lucia staring at him, Cole quickly changed his words. But of course, you're not that kind of person. At critical moments, you still care about the company. Lucia nodded. My life right now is a mess. I can't just let the company be a mess too. You're right, Cole agreed. I'm going to look for Tracy. As she spoke, Lucia turned around and left the office. Even if Cole didn't ask, he could tell that Lucia wasn't in a good mood. It would be fine if Dalen forgot everything else, but why did he forget about Lucia? It was already hard enough for Lucia to accept it, but Dalen was so cold and heartless to her. During work, Lucia went to Tracy's office. Inside, Tracy was working, and Lucia didn't knock on the door of the office when she entered. Are you busy? Lucia asked. Not very busy. Sit down. Tracy stood up and poured Lucia a glass of juice. Tracy sat down on the sofa and said, Do you like it? Lucia took a sip and said, It's quite nice. If you like it, then come over more often. Tracy smiled. Are you liking the job? Lucia asked. Of course I am. If I'm not, Mark will get mad at me. He was very insistent that I do everything exactly correctly. Lucia laughed dryly. She had heard that Mark was very strict at work. Lucia, I'm glad you came. You know, in the past, all of the documents that needed to be signed were all taken care of by Mr. Patrick. So now you might have to go through them yourself. But don't worry, I'll help you. If you don't understand, I'll help you understand. If you are in a dilemma, I will let you know the advantages and disadvantages of your options. Of course, if neither of us understand, we can ask Mark, Tracy explained. I understand. Then do you have any documents now that you need me to look at or sign? Lucia asked. Tracy pointed to the pile of documents on her desk. There's a pile over there, she said. Lucia looked over. There were really a lot of them. She stood up, walked over, and flipped through the documents on the top shelf. She had a lot to learn. But she was determined to not always rely on others. She had to learn her skills. Lucia carried the documents to the tea table and prepared to sit on the sofa to read. Tracy looked at Lucia and asked, Shall we start now? That's right. Let's begin now. Lucia nodded. We'll eat together at noon. Tracy looked at Lucia's expression and asked, Don't you need to go back home soon, though? Is it okay to stay here for so long? Lucia paused as she flipped through the documents. She knew what Tracy was worried about and said, It's okay. Dalen is at work as well. It sounds like his body is recovering very well, Tracy said. It's pretty good. However, his amnesia has yet to resolve, Lucia responded. Tracy looked at Lucia's depressed face and leaned forward. Is Mr. Patrick still being cold to you? Lucia nodded with some uneasiness on her face. It'll be fine once he regains his memories, she said. Why wait, though? Tracy asked. What do you mean? You can help him recover. Lucia's eyes immediately lit up. How can I help him? Tell me quickly. Tracy whispered into Lucia's ear. Lucia's face instantly turned red. Tracy saw that she was embarrassed and said, What's wrong with that? You are husband and wife. It is very normal. You didn't ever initiate intimacy in the past? Lucia shook her head. In the past, Dalen was always the one in control. Will it be helpful? Lucia asked doubtfully. Of course it will. I use this method to get Mark to love me again. You know, remarriage is much harder to deal with than amnesia, Tracy said. Really? Doesn't look like it, Lucia muttered. Let me tell you, no matter how cold a man is, he's still a man. He still needs it a lot in that area, Tracy said with great experience. But Dalen is still recovering. I'm afraid that it won't be good for his health, Lucia said worriedly. But it wasn't just that she was worried. She was also a bit nervous. Would Dalen faint halfway through? After all, his brain had not fully recovered yet. You are thinking about this too much. The fact that Dalen was able to go to work today means that he is already fine. You just need to be sure to seduce him. Maybe when he gets excited, blood will rush into his brain and recover his memories, Tracy said, and clapped her hands in excitement. Lucia saw the seriousness in Tracy's words, and she seriously considered the matter. After marrying Dalen, she had never taken the initiative to seduce him. Thinking about how she would do this to help Dalen recover his memories made her feel embarrassed and nervous. At noon, Lucia went to eat with Tracy, and afterwards, she stayed in Tracy's office to read the documents. If she knew what the document was talking about, she would sign it. If she didn't, she would ask Tracy. Lucia felt that if Mark and Tracy hadn't helped her, it would be impossible. She didn't even know how her company functioned. Lucia looked at the time. It was already past 4 o'clock. Thinking about how she had been locked out of the mansion, she said to Tracy, I'm heading out. I'll come back tomorrow." "Yes, go." Tracy added a reminder at the end. "Don't forget what I taught you." Then Tracy winked at Lucia. Lucia quickly ran back to her office. "Cole, I'm off work." "I thought you were going to join me for dinner," Cole said. "No, go eat by yourself. Bye-bye." Lucia turned around and left. Lucia didn't want to be locked out of the mansion again. She knew that Dalen wouldn't show any mercy to her. But when Lucia made it back, Dalen had still not come back yet. She went out to the rose garden to look at the beautiful flowers before sitting on the swing. As she swung back and forth, she felt somewhat depressed. It was as if every flower and grass here bore a deep memory, her and Dalen's memories. It couldn't be erased no matter how hard she tried. The roses were planted by Dalen, and the swings were created by him. They were all related to Dalen. If only sadness could be swept away by the swing, how good would that be? Dalen came back and got out of the car. As he was entering the hall, he glanced around, looking for Lucia. Edward noticed Dalen's gaze and said, "Miss Lucia went to the swing." "I didn't ask," Dalen growled. "Yes, sir," Edward replied. Even if he knew that Mr. Patrick's words were false, he would still not say anything. After Edward left, Dalen stood in the hall with dark eyes. Outside, Lucia sat on the swing, her face slightly raised. The leaves on the branches had sprouted and were starting to grow. As Lucia swung on the swing, she thought about that time when Dalen was standing on the swing with her. At that point, she was so upset about marrying Dalen that she spent all day thinking of escaping. Her emotions were just like the swing, swinging back and forth. Lucia sighed, not sure if Dalen had come back yet. In fact, Dalen was standing not far away. He looked at the slender and beautiful figure on the swing. Her slightly raised face looked like a rippling painting with the radiance of the dusk. It attracted his attention. Lucia dragged her feet on the ground, and the swing stopped. She stood up and turned to head back into the mansion. But as she turned, she saw Dalen, who was standing not far away. Lucia was stunned. She didn't expect Dalen to be back. What was he doing standing there? How long had he been there? "Dalen, did you just come back?" Lucia came back to her senses and walked up to him. Dalen looked at the swing and asked, "Who made the swing?" Lucia turned around to look. She was inspired by what Tracy had said to her in the office. Could it be that going to bed was the only thing that could help Dalen regain his memory? What if they recreated something from the past? Would that help to restore Dalen's memory? "Dalen, come over here for a bit." Lucia pulled Dalen's hand towards the swing. Seeing that Dalen didn't move, she said, "Why don't you come over for a bit? Come on." Dalen didn't know why he obeyed Lucia's words, but he walked in front of the swing. He even stood on the swing with her. The swing swung slightly. Dalen looked emotionlessly at Lucia, who raised her face up to him. What was she doing? "Dalen, do you have any memory of this? I'm in a corner of your memory somewhere, right?" Lucia asked with an expectant look in her eyes. "Nope." Dalen had no memory of her. Lucia was slightly disappointed, but she did not give up. She continued to smile and said, "It's all right. I can tell you. One day I had Edward help me put up this swing. I like to swing here often. Once we stood on the swing like this together. Do you remember?" Dalen really did try to think back. Previously, when he tried to think about the past, his head would still feel a twinge of pain. But now he doesn't feel anything anymore. Was he closer to regaining his memory or farther away? As for the swing, his only memory was looking at the swing from the window of his bedroom after coming home from the surgery. Dalen got off the swing with a dark expression and turned to leave. Lucia didn't know what she had said wrong. She quickly got off the swing. Dalen, what happened to you? Lucia chased after him. Even if you can't remember, don't be angry. I don't need you to remember. I'm just trying to help you regain your memories. I don't need your help, Dalen said coldly. You don't need my help? Don't you want to recover your memories? Lucia asked. Yes, but it has nothing to do with you. Lucia's footsteps paused as she looked at Dalen, who was walking away. What did he mean that it had nothing to do with her? Lucia snapped out of her daze and ran forward. She stood in front of Dalen. I'm going to soak in a hot spring, Lucia said. Dalen didn't respond. I'm going to soak in a hot spring, Lucia repeated. I'm not going, Dalen said harshly. Dalen, I know you want to recover your memories. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gone to the doctor today, right? Lucia said as she stared at Dalen. Don't ask me why. I just know that if we go soak in the hot spring where you took me before, you will remember something. Or are you afraid to remember? Lucia asked. Are you goading me? Dalen didn't understand Lucia. You're afraid that after you recover your memories, you'll discover that you've been a jerk to me, Lucia said. I don't think so. Dalen didn't feel like he was being unfair toward Lucia. Everything was her own fault. Lucia begged, Come on, maybe you will remember something. What if I can't? Dalen's black eyes narrowed as he looked at her. Lucia was so confident she did not expect Dalen to ask such a question. Dalen saw the helplessness and confusion that flashed across Lucia's eyes. It made his heart feel pity. Before he could think about it, his mouth had already opened. Fine, I'm going. Lucia's gloomy eyes immediately lit up. Are you for real? I was lying. Dalen walked towards the dining room. No, I heard you. Don't you dare go back on your word. Lucia happily followed him into the dining room. After dinner, the two went to soak in a hot spring. It was still there. Lucia stood there, watching the water. Dalen glanced at her and said, What? You don't dare to take off your clothes in front of me? I actually doubt whether we're husband and wife. As he said this, he stripped off his clothes, revealing a strong and sexy figure. Lucia's heart skipped a beat, and her face turned hot. She pretended to start to undress, but after Dalen went inside, Lucia put on her clothes again and went out the door. She waved to the bodyguard, Jake, and said something to him. Then Jake nodded and turned away. Lucia took a deep breath and went in to join Dalen. She took off her clothes, revealing a sexy swimsuit with a thin silk scarf wrapped underneath. Dalen, who was resting in the hot spring with his eyes closed, opened his eyes after hearing the commotion of Lucia entering. When his eyes focused on that slender and graceful figure, his pupils widened. Lucia noticed Dalen's gaze and blushed. However, she still remained calm and stepped into the hot spring. A wave of warmth spread through her body, because she knew what Dalen liked about her. Lucia sat beside Dalen, and Dalen's body tensed up a little. His black eyes were cold, and he looked straight ahead. Dalen, what do you think? Lucia's eyes twinkled as she tried to conceal her embarrassment. All Dalen could think of now was Lucia's attractive figure. I'm not looking. I'm not asking about what I'm wearing. I'm asking about the comfort of the hot spring. Last time we were here, I was so comfortable that I fell asleep. Lucia looked at Dalen's silhouette. Do you want to know how I slept? Dalen didn't say anything. He was still thinking about what Lucia looked like in that swimsuit. Seeing that Dalen didn't say anything, Lucia stood up and directly sat on Dalen's lap. Her back was pressed against Dalen's firm and safe chest, and her face was tilted upwards towards Dalen's firm jaw. No matter which direction she looked at Dalen from, he was always so handsome. Dalen, this is how you hugged me that time. Then I fell asleep. But before I fell asleep, we talked about which position makes it so two hearts are the closest to each other. Dalen couldn't understand what he was feeling, but his heart was beating fast. Lucia smiled. Do you know what posture I'm talking about? Back to back, Dalen answered. The smile on Lucia's face suddenly froze. She sat up straight and looked at Dalen in disbelief. You remembered? Dalen looked at her shocked expression. Nope. Then why did you answer correctly? Lucia asked. Dalen pursed his lips and didn't say anything. He didn't know why he had answered back to back, but he had just blurted it out. Dalen shrugged it off. I guessed. Lucia looked disappointed. You're really good at guessing. I thought you remembered for a moment because that was what I said back then. I didn't even know I was wrong, and you were the one who corrected me. Lucia softened her body and continued to lean on Dalen. Her clear eyes were tainted by a layer of mist as she looked at the steam coming off the water. Even if she couldn't help Dalen's memories this time, she wouldn't give up. She would continue to help Dalen find it, even if he couldn't find it here. Maybe if they traveled back to the scene of the accident, or to Cynthia's house. Lucia wanted to close her eyes and lose herself in this beautiful fantasy. However, she couldn't. She still had to take Dalen to sleep in the tent, and deal with what would happen next. Dalen shifted his black eyes and looked down at Lucia. His eyes followed Lucia's neck down to her collarbone, and below that. The blood in Dalen's body was boiling. This was the closest they had been since he'd gotten home from the hospital. Lucia fell asleep in Dalen's embrace, and when she woke up, she was in the tent. But why was Lucia the only one in the tent? Where was Dalen? Lucia hurried out of the tent and saw a tall figure standing not far away, facing the mountain range. The sky was dark, and only the contours of the mountains could be seen. What was Dalen thinking? Lucia slowly approached and stood behind Dalen. I was asleep. What made you come out here? Lucia asked. Didn't you tell me where we were going? Dalen didn't turn around. He still looked into the distance, but his eyes were even darker than the night that shrouded the mountain range. I did, but I didn't say the route, Lucia reasoned. Dalen turned around and said coldly, You think that I don't know how to ask? Lucia suddenly understood. That's right. Dalen could have asked the bodyguard. However, it also surprised her. She thought that Dalen didn't believe anyone. If he asked a bodyguard, did that mean that Dalen believed that he had brought her here before? Dalen, were you willing to believe me? Lucia asked. She hoped that Dalen would give her an answer that would make her happy. But no. Since this is the arrangement you wanted, I decided to cooperate with you. If I still don't remember anything, then there will be no need for such a thing in the future, Dalen said. Lucia huffed. This was not what I wanted. I was just helping you find your memories. Even if you can't remember, I won't give up. We went on a trip together during the New Year. Maybe we can go out and do that again, Lucia said. Are you talking about when you ran away from home and I had to come find you? I was hurt because of you. Do you think this will help me recover my memories? Dalen's eyes were cold. Lucia could sense the sarcasm and indifference in Dalen's words. Dalen, I'm afraid the thing I regret the most in my life is running away from home and harming you. Lucia looked at Dalen with tears in her eyes. So, can you let me make it up to you? Or, I'll give you another benefit. Dalen looked at her deeply. If you never recover your memories, I will leave you and stay far away from you. Okay? Lucia said. Dalen was stunned and asked, Is that true? Yes, what I just said is absolutely true. If you don't believe it, I can write it down in black and white. Lucia just wanted Dalen to give her a chance to make up for all the pain she'd caused him. Dalen looked at the serious expression in Lucia's eyes. He thought that he would be happy to hear Lucia said that she'd leave him alone. After all, there was still Victoria. However, he did not feel relaxed at all. His heart felt heavy, as if it was being squeezed. Why? Wasn't it better to divorce Lucia? All he knew was that he wanted Lucia to divorce him. But now that Lucia had put forward such a condition, why was he so silent? Dalen's heart began to feel uncomfortable again, like there were thousands of needles stabbing into his body. It made his face hurt. Lucia saw that something was wrong with Dalen's expression and immediately asked, "Dalen, what happened to you?" "I'm fine," Dalen panted. "How are you fine? You look like you're in pain." "Forget it. Let's go back." Lucia pulled Dalen's arm as if she was pulling a floating log. She didn't want to sleep in the tent anymore. She didn't want to be haunted by Dalen's memories again. Why didn't she think of what would happen if Dalen had a relapse? She couldn't be so selfish, could she? She had always felt that Dalen losing his memories was at least better than Dalen dying from falling off the cliff. It didn't matter if Dalen never got his memories back. She could wait, slowly, for her whole life. Dalen looked at Lucia's nervous and panicked expression, and again he was confused by the clarity of her eyes. Lucia turned her gaze away in a sorry manner. "I'm fine. I'm not in pain." Dalen withdrew his arm and headed towards the tent. Lucia looked at Dalen's back as he walked away. After entering the tent, Lucia saw Dalen lying down. His large body took up more than half of the space. Lucia walked over and knelt beside Dalen. She looked at Dalen, who had his eyes closed, and asked, "Are you really all right? There's no pain?" "Yes, I'm fine," Dalen sighed. "Dalen, where did it hurt? Was it a headache? Why did you clutch your chest? I thought I saw you clutching your chest in the hospital before too. Are you suffering from internal injuries?" Lucia asked nervously. "Nope." Dalen had his eyes closed. At the beginning, he also thought that something was wrong with his heart. But after going to the hospital, the doctors found nothing wrong with his heart. It was still healthy. Then why did it sometimes feel uncomfortable? Moreover, it was only in front of Lucia that such a reaction would occur. Dalen slowly opened his eyes and looked at Lucia, who was kneeling beside him with her head lowered. "Dalen, we can go back right now. Since you have a plane, we can have it come and pick us up. It won't be long," Lucia said. "You don't want to help me find my memories? Do you regret what you just said?" Dalen looked at her coldly with his black eyes. Lucia had to admit, even though Dalen had a brain injury, his cleverness hadn't changed at all. "No, I'm just worried about your health." "I said I'm fine," Dalen argued. "You take a rest. I'll go out and take a walk. I'll be right back," Lucia said as she walked out of the tent. Jake was waiting for her in the distance with a box in his hand. "Did you get it?" Lucia asked. "Got it. It's in here." Jake passed the box to Lucia. "Thank you." "No problem, ma'am." Lucia took the box and returned to the tent. Dalen was lying inside with his hand rested on the back of his head in a lazy posture. He saw Lucia walk in with a box in her hand. "Dalen, I'm going to give you a present." Lucia knelt down beside Dalen. Dalen's gaze fell on the box in Lucia's hand. His lips were pursed, but he did not say anything. Did she bring him here just to give him a present? Although he lost his memory, he had no interest in gifts. However, he was still a bit curious about the gift that Lucia was offering him. At this moment, the surrounding lights were turned off, and the interior of the tent was engulfed in darkness. Everything was dark. Dalen squinted in the darkness as he looked at Lucia, who was sitting beside him. He couldn't help but sit up. "Dalen," Lucia called to him. Then she fumbled with the box and opened it. Suddenly, Dalen saw a bunch of fireflies blinking in the darkness. The tent, which was originally dark, was now ablaze with light. Dalen's gaze fell on those fireflies. His heart started beating at an abnormal rate. His eyes were filled with shock. What kind of gift was this? These little fireflies were making him emotional. Or perhaps it was because it was so unexpected, and that was what was causing him to stare absent-mindedly at the fireflies. Under the halo of light, Lucia looked at the expression on Dalen's face. It was as if she hoped that Dalen could recover his memories in the next second. "Dalen, do you like it?" Lucia asked softly. Dalen pursed his lips and didn't say anything, but he looked at Lucia, whose eyes were full of expectation. "Did you remember anything?" Lucia asked. In the end, Dalen's silence made her heart sink. "Do you know? You did this for me once. That time you brought me to soak in a hot spring. We slept in a tent, and you put fireflies in it for me. You didn't know, but I was so moved. I will never forget that moment for the rest of my life." As Lucia spoke, her eyes were filled with tears, which glistened under the fluorescent lights. She looked desolate and sad. Dalen's breathing was heavy, and his heart began to beat erratically. He should have looked away, but he couldn't take his eyes off Lucia's face. "When did it happen?" he asked. "In December. I told you a scary story at night, and I scared myself. Then you had to leave the tent for a moment, and I was scared, but I didn't stop you. I reminded you not to get caught by the bad guys. I was alone in the tent waiting for you to come back, and when you came back, I saw the fireflies flying in the darkness of the tent." "Dalen, do you really have no memory of that at all?" Lucia's words were detailed, and she clearly remembered every moment of that night. She couldn't believe that Dalen didn't remember anything. How could he forget? "Are you lying to me?" Dalen asked suspiciously, while enduring the extreme discomfort in his chest. "I wouldn't lie to you about this. Ever since you lost your memory, everything I've said to you has been true," Lucia quickly explained. "Then tell me, where would I have found fireflies in December?" Dalen challenged. "Next to the hot spring. I asked you that same question that night, and that's what you told me," Lucia said eagerly. She was afraid that Dalen wouldn't believe her. Dalen looked at the fireflies flying in the air. Was what Lucia said really true? Did he do that for her? If it was fake, her lies could be easily exposed. Dalen lay down and stared at the fireflies with his black eyes. He also wanted to recover his memories as soon as possible. Exactly what had happened between him and Lucia? Why did his heart ache? If what Lucia said about him was true, then how deep were his feelings for her? "Dalen, are you going to sleep?" Lucia asked. Lucia lay down beside Dalen. "What did we do after the fireflies?" Dalen asked in a low voice as he looked at the fireflies dancing in the air. Lucia pursed her lips. Her eyes flickered and her face was burning. Dalen turned and saw what was hidden in Lucia's eyes. "Is it hard to say?" Dalen teased. "No. After the fireflies, we kissed, and then we—" Lucia's face reddened as she shyly blinked her eyes. Dalen finally understood what Lucia's plan was. He was a man, of course he understood. There was a thick awkwardness in the air. Dalen shifted his gaze from Lucia and looked at the top of the tent. His body was beginning to feel hot, and his heart was thumping. Lucia hadn't done anything. She had only suggested. How could he have such a reaction? And it wasn't something he could control, even though he wanted to. Lucia cleared her throat to hide her uneasiness. In the still, hot air, Lucia thought of the seduction techniques that Tracy had told her. Lucia wanted to recreate the memories of the past to help Dalen recover his memories, but from the looks of it, it didn't have any effect at all. Then, should she try to seduce him? "Dalen, I feel a bit hot. Let me take off my clothes." As Lucia spoke, she sat up and started slowly taking off her clothes, making sure Dalen could see. Dalen felt his blood boiling. His reaction was normal. He had not touched a woman since he entered the hospital. Lucia settled back down and waited for a long time. but she didn't hear any response from Dalen. Dalen really had lost his memory. If she had done this in the past, he wouldn't be so restrained. Dalen was like a wolf, impatient to the extreme. But now, would he be able to resist her? "Dalen, do you know what you liked about me the most?" Lucia whispered to Dalen. Dalen swallowed hard. It was as if she was luring him into a primal reaction. "Here." Lucia turned towards Dalen and lifted the blanket. Dalen immediately understood. He said in a low and hoarse voice, "Don't provoke me." "I'm telling the truth." "Ah!" Before Lucia could finish her sentence, Dalen had already flipped over and covered her with his body. Lucia's breathing became unstable as she looked at her husband. Her heart raced and her face flushed red. "Dalen!" Lucia called out to him urgently. "Was this the trick you used before when you tricked me into marrying you?" Dalen's eyes were sharp and profound. "No!" Lucia shook her head. Dalen stretched out his hand to hold Lucia's jaw, and he raised her face up with a slight force. He said in a deep voice, "I remember you saying that I can't touch Victoria until I recover my memories. But how do I know if touching you is betraying her?" "How could you betray her? We're the ones who are husband and wife." Lucia disagreed. "But a couple must have feelings for each other," Dalen countered. "Then why did you marry me?" Lucia asked bitterly. "I don't remember." Dalen's dark eyes turned cold. Lucia's mood completely vanished. This was simply asking to be humiliated. "Fine, get off." Lucia struggled as she pushed Dalen away with both hands. However, Dalen's body was heavy, and he wasn't moving. "I told you to get off. Didn't you hear?" Lucia's words were stuck in her throat. Her face was flushed as she looked at Dalen's tense face and the dark glint in his eyes. It seemed as if he wanted to devour her. "Are you trying to refuse or welcome me?" Dalen suppressed his voice, trying not to sound hoarse. Upon hearing this, Lucia glared at him. "That's right, I was just about to reject you. Can we stop now?" "Well, now that we're here, I don't want to disappoint you," Dalen sneered. "What do you mean?" "I'll satisfy you." When Lucia realized what Dalen was going to do, she was stunned. Dalen was actually interested? As Lucia thought about this change of events, Dalen no longer gave her the chance to hesitate and pressed her down tightly. "Ah! Be a bit more gentle." Lucia struggled. How long had it been since she was like this with Dalen? It was familiar, but still a bit scary. Dalen, on the other hand, kissed her using more urgency than Lucia remembered. Lucia stopped struggling and cooperated with him, following Dalen's lead and matching his rhythm. It had been so long since Dalen had touched her. Lucia's heart was filled with deep pain and regret, but also joy and longing. Suddenly, Dalen bit down on her lip a bit too hard. "Ah! It hurts!" Lucia cried. Dalen had one hand on Lucia's face as he asked, "Who are you thinking about? It seems like I'm not enough." "I'm not thinking of anyone." Lucia's hands reached up to Dalen's broad shoulders. Her eyes were tinged with a layer of mist, making her look even more beautiful. Dalen's eyes were tightly locked onto Lucia's face, and he felt blood rush to his head. Lucia wrapped her arms around Dalen's neck and pulled him down until their lips pressed together. Lucia didn't want to stop kissing him. Once she tasted him, she didn't want to leave. Instead, she wanted to deepen it like a greedy beast. The two of them hugged each other and kissed deeply, and they could not bear to part with each other. It was as though, even if the sky collapsed, Lucia and Dalen wouldn't be able to be separated. Those fireflies kept beautifully blinking in the dark tent. Lucia let herself go completely. No matter what Dalen did to her, she would cooperate with him. Even when she heard Dalen growl like a wild beast, she wanted to cry because she had missed him so much. She wanted to make it even harder for him to control himself. Lucia almost fainted from happiness. The next morning, when Lucia woke up, the sky was already bright. She opened her sleepy eyes and saw Dalen looking at her. Lucia immediately snapped out of her daze and remembered what the two of them had done last night. Her face was still burning. Dalen looked at Lucia and said, "I finally understand why I want to marry you." "Why?" Lucia also wanted to know what Dalen was thinking. "You did well," Dalen teased. Lucia excitedly sat up, but suddenly felt pain in her waist. Dalen's gaze fell on Lucia, who was not completely covered up. Her fair skin had faint bruises. Of course, the marks were from him. After losing his memories, he thought that he had no desires, but he didn't expect this to surprise him. It was like he couldn't be satisfied. "Dalen, what are you talking about?" Lucia asked innocently, even though she knew what that meant. "You were my first time. Everything I know is what you taught me." Dalen hadn't remembered that it was Lucia's first time, but after hearing this, he felt a surge of joy in his heart, and his mood immediately turned good. He sat up and put on the clothes beside him, saying, "Since you're so impressive, I won't make things difficult for you in the future, as long as you listen to me." After saying that, he put on his clothes and left the tent. Lucia was left speechless as she sat under the blanket. What was he saying? What did he mean by being impressive? It was as if she was able to obtain Dalen's favor, only because she was giving him what he wanted. Dalen didn't even show any signs of regaining his memory. Even with the intensity of last night, there was still no effect. Lucia felt that she had wasted her efforts. On the way back, no matter how comfortable the car was, Lucia felt uncomfortable all over. Lucia looked at Dalen and saw that he was also looking at her. Their eyes met. Dalen's eyes were filled with a deep, fluctuating luster. "Dalen, can you hold me? I'm so sleepy. I didn't sleep much last night," Lucia asked. Dalen turned his face away without saying a word. Lucia lay down and rested her head on Dalen's firm thigh. Dalen frowned. "Did I not let you sleep enough?" Lucia's eyes were closed and her mouth was curved in a smile. Dalen felt a bit awkward as he looked at Lucia, who had closed her eyes and started to fall asleep. He should have pushed her aside, but he never did. Not long after, the sound of Lucia's slow breathing could be heard. Dalen's eyes darkened as his gaze fell on her pouting lips. He could still remember what she tasted like. Dalen twitched his
You've been hunt. Just let me know if you need anything.
I don't care about the richest.
That would be ideal.
face and forced his gaze outside the car window. He had to wait until evening. Dalen frowned deeply as he thought of something. Would he really marry Lucia just for this? If he were really only infatuated with her body, wouldn't he have just taken her as a lover for a period of time? Why did he marry her? Dalen couldn't help but feel irritated. He needed to recover his memories as soon as possible. After work, Cole decided to go to the hospital to see Spencer, who still hadn't woken up yet. Cole bought some food and went straight to the hospital. When he entered the room, Spencer was still lying quietly, and there were guards nearby. "Have you eaten?" Cole asked. "Not yet," the guards answered. "I'll watch. You go and eat," Cole said. The guards and nurse left the room. Cole looked at Spencer, who had his eyes closed, then sat on a stool beside the bed. He opened his lunchbox and started to eat. As he ate, he said to Spencer, "Why aren't you awake? Mr. Patrick has been awake for a long time, but you still don't show the slightest sign of waking up." Cole ate a piece of a sandwich and chewed thoughtfully. He then said, "I hope you wake up quickly. I come to see you every 2 or 3 days. Everyone thinks I'm your boyfriend, and they all think I'm infatuated with you," Cole joked. Just as Cole was getting excited, Spencer, who was on the bed, opened his eyes. "I say—" Cole looked at Spencer's open eyes and spat all the food out of his mouth. Cole suspected that he was seeing things. He stood up and leaned forward and realized that Spencer's eyes really were open. You're awake?" Cole asked. Spencer looked at him. "You're really awake?" Cole asked again. "I'm not in the habit of sleeping with my eyes open," Spencer said. "That means I'm awake." "I'll call a doctor," Cole said as he rang the doctor's bell. The doctor arrived soon after. The doctor examined Spencer, and Cole stopped eating and stood aside to watch the doctor. Cole was shocked that Spencer looked so alert. After the doctor finished his examination, he said, "He's fine now. All of his body's indicators are normal." "He's really okay?" Cole asked. "Yes. After he gets some food, help him walk around the ward. After all, he's been lying in bed for too long," the doctor said. "Oh, all right," Cole said hesitantly. This was definitely not necessary. There was a nurse in charge of watching over him, wasn't there? After the doctor left, Cole said, "I'll get you something to eat." With that, he left. Spencer lay on the bed and looked at Cole until he left the ward. Was Cole the one that took care of him the entire time he was in a coma? That didn't seem to make much sense. Cole brought the food and helped Spencer to sit on the bed and passed the bowl to him, but Spencer did not take the bowl. "What's wrong? You don't like it?" Cole asked. "Could you feed me?" Spencer looked away, feeling ashamed. "I have no strength." So that's how it was. Seeing that Spencer lacked the strength, Cole scooped up a spoonful of the soup and fed it to him. What else could he do? The nurse had gone on a break. If Cole had known that Spencer would wake up today, he wouldn't have come. "I just happened to come to see you today. I didn't expect you to wake up," Cole said. "Lucia told me to come visit you. She didn't want to come and she didn't want you to be alone." Spencer didn't have any reaction to Cole's words. He only asked, "Where's Mr. Patrick?" "Him? He's pretty good." Cole thought about it and said, "Actually, he's not good either. He's lost his memory." Spencer was stunned as he looked at Cole. Cole continued, "Didn't your car fall off the cliff? Mr. Patrick's head was injured and he underwent intensive surgery. After waking up, he could not remember anything. But don't worry, other than him not remembering, everything else is fine." "What about Lucia?" Spencer asked. "She wasn't injured, but now Dalen treats Lucia coldly and he treats Victoria well. It's as if his feelings for Lucia have shifted to Victoria. Dalen didn't believe anything that Lucia told him. In any case, things have not been going well for them. After you leave the hospital, you must tell Dalen the truth," Cole said. Spencer didn't expect so much to happen while he was unconscious. Mr. Patrick has amnesia? He doesn't remember anyone? Didn't that include him? After the meal, Cole continued to sit on the edge of Spencer's bed without moving. "You can help me up and walk around," Spencer said. "Eh? Me? The nurse will be back soon. Let's wait." Cole didn't want to help Spencer walk around. "Don't you like me?" Spencer's words shocked Cole. What did you say? Cole was upset. Who likes you? I seem to have heard you say that you're my boyfriend, Spencer teased. Did I say that? I think you just heard a rumor, Cole said, trying not to sound embarrassed. Then you're not going to help me? Spencer asked. Cole gritted his teeth. Forget it, he thought. I don't know when the nurse will be back. Besides, Lucia's happiness is entirely dependent on him. Thus, Cole had to bear with the humiliation. Cole helped Spencer up and they walked around the room. Cole was sticking close to Spencer's body, making sure to support him. If everything goes well, you can be discharged in 2 or 3 days, Cole said. Then, when you go back to see Mr. Patrick, you must speak up for Lucia. I know. Even if Cole didn't say anything, Spencer still knew what to do. Dylan had never liked Victoria at all. How could something happen between him and Victoria? If he didn't do anything, it would be a dereliction of duty. I have something else to tell you. Dylan brought Mr. Leland back to the Patrick family business. Spencer looked at Cole with a frown. Indeed, it was much more serious than he had imagined. How could Mr. Patrick forget about Lucia so completely? Across town, Robert, who was still socializing outside, received a call from the nurse he bought in the hospital. He was very shocked. What did you say? Spencer has woken up? Robert hung up the phone and was very angry. At first, after Dylan woke up, Robert had tried to hire people to kill Spencer, but no one took the job. Robert didn't expect Spencer to wake up so quickly. He wandered around the office, trying to think about what he was going to do. Spencer would tell Dylan the truth about everything. Would Dylan believe him? Robert quickly called Victoria. Spencer woke up, he said. Seriously? When? She asked, feeling panicked. He just woke up. He will definitely tell Dylan the truth. Do you have any ideas? Robert asked. Victoria smiled faintly. You don't need to worry. I'll make sure that Dylan won't believe him. I already said that Victoria is the smartest, Robert praised. Don't worry, Robert. I will take care of this, Victoria assured. After Victoria hung up the phone, she was determined to succeed. She had been tricked by Lucia and was kicked out of the mansion. But this was how she could take back her position. Spencer was just a bodyguard. Why would Dylan believe Spencer before her? Victoria left for Linda's place. With Linda as her backer, she could accomplish anything. When Victoria got to Linda's house, the maid saw her and immediately smiled. Hello, Miss Victoria. Linda is just finishing her dinner. It doesn't matter. I'll wait here, Victoria said. Why don't I go get her? The maid said. Don't, really, I can wait, Victoria said gently. Seeing that she was so considerate and sensible, the smile on the maid's face became even wider. No wonder Linda wanted Victoria to marry Mr. Patrick. After Linda finished, the maid brewed a cup of tea for her and said, Miss Victoria is here. Where is she? Linda asked. She's waiting in the garden. Linda stood by the door and saw Victoria standing by the side of the garden. What a gentle picture. Miss Victoria has been here for a long time. She saw that you were busy and didn't want me to call you, so she just waited here, the maid said. Linda nodded. If it was Lucia, she definitely would have made a ruckus. Go and call her in. Yes, ma'am. When Victoria walked in and saw Linda, she immediately gave a gentle smile. Linda, how have you been? With you here, how can I not be good? But why are you so late? Linda asked. Victoria's expression changed. When Linda saw it, she felt certain that something had happened. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing. I can't stay in the mansion forever, so I've been home for the last 2 days, Victoria explained. Why didn't you tell me? Linda frowned. It is a small matter, and I didn't want to disturb you, so I don't want to tell you about it, Victoria said. Linda's expression turned ugly. Even if you didn't tell me, I'd still want to know. It must be related to Lucia, right? No, I wanted to go back myself, Victoria lied. Linda didn't believe it. Victoria liked Dalen so much. Why would she go back to Robert's house? Linda took a deep breath to start berating Victoria, but Victoria began speaking again. Linda, don't be angry. I'll tell you the truth. I was going back to the mansion today, but then I heard something and I didn't dare go. What was it? Linda asked in curiosity. Spencer woke up. He was Dalen's closest bodyguard. He will definitely say something to Dalen. I was afraid, so I didn't go, Victoria said timidly. He's awake? When did this happen? Linda was surprised. Today, Victoria replied. And why would such a small thing like this scare you? Linda felt that Victoria was really timid and adorable. Well, if Spencer tells Dalen about the past, wouldn't Dalen become confused? I'm sure he won't believe me anymore. I don't know what to do, Victoria said weakly. There was a scheming look in Linda's eyes as she sneered. There is a way to solve everything that has happened. If Dalen doesn't even believe in his bodyguards and servants now, then Spencer's testimony is of no threat at all. Victoria lowered her gaze, thinking the same thing. That night, Dalen returned to the study after dinner. Lucia was sitting alone in the living room, watching a movie. How long would it take for Dalen to come out of the study? Forget it. No matter how long it took for him to come out, she would wait. As a wife, she had to do this, right? Lucia finished watching the movie, but Dalen still hadn't come out of the study. Lucia was so tired, and she wanted to go to bed early because she hadn't recovered from last night's physical activity. Young madame, are you hungry? In the past, you loved to eat pasta. How about I have the kitchen cook it right now? John asked. All right, go ahead, but don't put meat in there, Lucia reminded him. I know. John was immediately in a joyful mood as he went to the kitchen. This morning, he saw Dalen carrying Lucia up to their room after she fell asleep in the car. Did that mean their situation had eased up? Even if Mr. Patrick lost his memories, he still wouldn't forget his feelings for Miss Lucia. Lucia turned off the television and waited for the pasta to arrive. She didn't really want to eat it, but it reminded her of the meals she ate with Dalen. When the pasta was ready, John walked over. Give it to me, Lucia greeted him, and help me knock on the study door. John immediately understood Lucia's meaning and nodded in agreement with a smile. John knocked on the door of the study. Open it, Lucia said. John was apprehensive. Mr. Patrick hadn't responded yet, but still he pushed the door open. Lucia stuck her head in and saw Dalen, who was sitting behind the desk. Then she carried the pasta in, and John closed the door behind her. Dalen, can I come in? Lucia asked with a smile. Dalen looked at her with indifferent eyes. You're already here. Lucia placed the pasta in front of Dalen. Go ahead, it's delicious. No need, Dalen said. You used to like to eat this pasta, Lucia urged. Dalen looked at her suspiciously. He didn't think that he would like to eat this kind of thing. I'm not lying to you. You and I ate this many times in the past, Lucia said seriously. Then she directly handed a fork to Dalen. Eat a few mouthfuls. Believe me, I promise you won't even be able to stop. Dalen rolled his eyes. Can't you see that I'm busy? Lucia turned her head and looked at his laptop. It was all densely packed with data. Even if you're busy, you still need to eat, she said. I'm not in the habit of eating at night, Dalen said. Then just eat a bite or two, okay? I'll eat what's left over. If you want to swap spit, all you have to do is ask. An evil glint flashed across Dalen's cold eyes. I definitely do not, Lucia denied loudly. She just wanted to get back to how she felt. Memories can be forgotten, but not taste. Do you understand what I mean? Dalen, what do you mean? I just meant that I'll have whatever you don't eat. Lucia was in a hurry to explain. It's just pasta. No need to get so excited. Dalen picked up his fork and started eating the pasta. It tasted good, but he wasn't interested. But why did he eat it? And he couldn't stop. Dalen, can you leave some for me to eat? Lucia asked. Before Dalen answered her, Lucia grabbed his fork and started eating the pasta. Dalen looked at her indifferently. Didn't you bring this pasta for me? I'm so hungry from watching you eat it. Don't be so stingy. Lucia chewed on the noodles. Dalen didn't argue with her and just watched her eating with relish. Only one word flashed across his mind. Adorable. Lucia's small, alluring mouth turned from pink to a captivating red due to the heat of the food. Dalen couldn't help but stare deeply. Lucia ate a few mouthfuls, her face full of satisfaction. Just when she wanted to ask Dalen if he still wanted to eat, he grabbed her wrist and she froze. Next, he pulled her over. Lucia fell into Dalen's embrace in shock. She raised her head and looked at Dalen's face with a puzzled expression. Before she could recover her senses, Dalen gently lifted her face to his. Ugh! Lucia's long eyelashes trembled. Her mind was completely muddled from the kiss. Why did Dalen suddenly kiss her? The kiss deepened, and it was as if he wanted to devour her whole body. However, it seemed like Dalen wanted more than that. Dalen, what are you doing? Lucia started to resist. Her body hadn't recovered from last night yet. Dalen stared at her with his eyes like a beast. What? You don't want to? What do you want from me? Lucia asked. Is this not your duty as a wife? Dalen asked. Is that all? Lucia was hoping for Dalen to regain his memories because of this. She was worried that Dalen didn't actually care about her, and this was just to satisfy his own needs. Dalen looked at Lucia's reluctant expression and pushed her away. If you don't want to, then leave. Lucia staggered 2 steps back. Looking at Dalen's cold expression, she knew that he was angry. However, she felt that she couldn't give in to Dalen. They had stayed up most of the night and she had only slept a tiny bit. Dalen didn't know how to control himself, but she couldn't take much more. Therefore, Lucia bit her lip, picked up the pasta, and left the study. The door to the study room closed, and she was gone. Just like that. Dalen's face darkened. Hadn't she seen his cold expression? She actually dared to leave him like this. How dare she? He could not focus on the computer any longer. His mind was filled with rage. He felt as if he would lose all rationality at any moment. He wanted Lucia, and he felt that using force wasn't anything out of the ordinary. To him, it seemed almost normal. After Lucia returned to her room, she went to take a bath. After washing up, she went to bed to lie down. She wrapped herself up tightly. No matter what, she would not compromise. She couldn't let Dalen do this kind of thing again. When Dalen returned to the room, he saw that Lucia had fallen asleep on the bed. She looked deep asleep. One foot was hanging over the blanket, small and white, clean and cute. Dalen's gaze fell on it, and he was stunned. Her foot was so adorable that it was alluring. However, thinking of Lucia's refusal, he turned his gaze away and headed into the bathroom. Lucia slept soundly until the sun rose. When she woke up, she was alone on the bed. When did Dalen get up? Looking at the time, it was almost noon. After washing up, she walked out of her room and descended the stairs. She didn't see Dalen anywhere. John walked over. Miss Lucia, Mr. Patrick has gone to the office. When did he leave? She asked. Right after breakfast, John said. Young madam, are you hungry? You didn't even eat breakfast. Yeah, I could eat. Lucia returned to her room after eating lunch. She took out her phone and looked at it, seeing 3 missed calls from Cole. This caused her to be stunned. What was so urgent that Cole called 3 times? Lucia called back. Are you looking for me? She asked when Cole answered. I called you yesterday. Did you just see it? Cole asked. I was a bit busy. Lucia rubbed her nose guiltily. Yesterday she had been resting, and her thoughts were all on Dalen. How could she have the time to look at her phone? Let me tell you some good news, Cole continued. What? As long as it wasn't bad news, Lucia thought. Spencer woke up. Really? Lucia was excited. Of course it's true. He woke up at dinner yesterday and you didn't answer my call. I'll be right over. After Lucia put down the phone, she went downstairs with her bag in her hand. When John saw this, he asked, Miss Lucia, are you going to the company? Yes. What would you like for dinner? I'll tell the kitchen, John offered. Anything, as long as there's no meat. With that, Lucia disappeared. Lucia rushed to the hospital. When she came into Spencer's room, she saw Spencer, who had just finished eating. Lucia jumped onto the bed excitedly. Spencer, you're finally awake. I'm so relieved. Miss Lucia, Spencer greeted her. So much has changed. I need your help. Lucia was so conflicted that she wanted to cry, but had no tears. Cole told me already, Spencer said. Then you must help me clarify this with Dalen. Please help me or else I'll be done for, Lucia begged. I will, Spencer nodded. Lucia smiled widely. Spencer, you're a good person. No wonder Cole cares about you so much. You're worth it, Lucia said.